Well, that's not how we thought today's show would go, but here we are. Aaron Jackson, Mark Paulette on the drive. Last show of the week. No show tomorrow. No show Monday. Back at it on Tuesday of next week after the 4th of July holiday.
Brad couldn't have waited 24 hours.
Some fireworks.
We got a 4-day weekend in front of us. He couldn't have waited 24 more hours.
Well, it makes today's show interesting, Mark, and that's what is important to us.
It does, but it's sad.
Here's what we have coming up in today's show. We're, of course, going to talk a lot about Jaylen Brown and the trade to the Philadelphia 76ers, something that I don't think was on anyone's bingo card. Who did we have? We had someone on the show, Adam Kaufman, where he said, Brad keeps things close to the vest. They never, it's always a shock when they make moves. So I expected, he was basically laying out exactly what happened, that it was going to be this incredible shock.
I think
because no one would see it coming, and no one could have seen this coming.
Nobody saw it coming. We were hoping for a shock in the KG Paul Pierce fleece the other team, not get fleeced kind of a move, which, we'll get into it. We'll get into the reports of what was asked for, what the 76ers pushed back on initially, but Paul George and 2 future firsts for the guy who was the 6th most productive player in the league last year.
We'll break all that down. We'll have a Sports Center weather forecast. We'll have Noah Dalzell joining us from CLNS Media and the Celtics blog to talk of what you would imagine we'd talk about. Second hour of the show, we'll have Drive On starting here in July. As the weather gets hotter, we decided to go on a little drive. So some prizes up for grabs there that we'll lay out in the second hour of the show. Kevin Paul DuPont will come on to talk about the Boston Bruins, who are making moves that now no one cares about. And then we'll go to buzzer beaters. No Red Sox baseball tonight. They are having a much-needed breather after falling back-to-back games to the Nationals.
Talk about a little reprieve for this team. You jet off to the left coast. Brad Stevens trades Jaylen Brown to Philadelphia. Nobody remembers you anymore. No one is worried that you stink at baseball, that you're 11, 12 games under 500. The city is on fire by someone else's doing.
Yeah. We're brought to you by Next Home Experience, the market leader. Get looked and get sold with Next Home Experience. Now, I was talking to Mark before the show, and I think we're going to lay it out thusly. I'm not going to sit here on this microphone, and Mark, I don't think you want to do this either, for the next 2 hours and just talk about what a terrible deal it is. I have yet to find anyone that can explain why they think it's a good deal. I've seen people do some real reaches to try to come up with reasons before saying it doesn't work. So I don't know if we need to spend a ton of time on that. We'll say he got traded, Jaylen Brown, to the Philadelphia 76ers, your direct rival, by the way. That's the worst kind of trade to do in this type of scenario. That's like Babe Ruth to the Yankees. For Paul George, who is rated, if not the worst contract in the NBA, the second worst. It's a very bad deal for 2 more years because he is going to take, it's a player option next year. He's going to take that. He's making $54 million. No one's going to pay him that, so he'll take it. And two future first-round picks and 2 future second-round picks. Now, it should be noted, the first of the 2 first-round picks is a pick swap.
It's very convoluted, too. It's like if it lands in the top 8, the Celtics get it, but if it's 9 through 30, it conveys to something else into a pick swap.
That, to me, feels like a nothing. And that's because based off the team makeup now, you would suspect the Sixers are going to be a better team than the Celtics. And if that's the case, the Celtics would have a better draft pick. They would have no reason to want to swap the pick, so you get nothing.
Yeah, that's the hardest part for me to wrap my head around is the fact that you just gift-wrap Jaylen Brown to the Philadelphia 76ers to go along with Tyrese Maxey, to go along with Joel Embiid, to go along with BJ Edgecombe. You flip-flop spots with them in the Eastern Conference last night, in my mind, is what you did. You said, hey, Philly, you move all the way up to number 2 or number 3, hang out in that neighborhood. We'll go down to 6 or fighting for our play-in life and hang out down there because, Paul George, I've seen a couple of people try to say, hey, remember that playoff series last year? He was the better of he and Jaylen Brown. Sure, for 5 games, he was okay. Well, the Celtics were blowing a 3-1 lead for the first time in franchise history. Things weren't going well on the other side of the ball. No one is sitting here and saying that Paul George, at this point, he is 60% the basketball player Jaylen Brown is. I don't even know that they got 60 cents on the dollar, though, because of the assets you're talking about.
So Paul George, I think if someone had said to the Philadelphia 76ers, hey, we're going to give you nothing, but you're going to give us Paul George, they would have said, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, you're taking that contract off the books? Because like you said, it's not an expiring deal. It's this year, plus a pretty sure guarantee that he's going to want to sign up for that $57 million next year.
Exactly.
That won't come his way from anywhere else.
And so for all those reasons, it's a terrible deal. And I challenge anyone to give us a call, and we want to open up the phone line here towards the end of this, 992-9029. If you disagree and think it's a great deal, fine. I'd love to hear the theories. I have searched the internet, I have scoured places, and I have yet to see it. What I want to do instead is focus on the why, because I think that's more relevant, and that's more talking about the future, and it's more interesting to me than just berating the fact that it was a terrible deal. Because here's the thing. Everyone's comparing it to the Luka Doncic trade, and rightly so, it feels. But the Mavericks made that deal with Nico, whatever his face is, and it was widely said at the time, like, he's a pretty bad GM, and we knew that, and he got fleeced.
Yeah. We were expecting Brad Stevens to come out on top of this move.
No, or at least be neutral. Like, no one thinks Brad Stevens is a bad GM, is a dumb person. And so when something is as illogical as this happens, I think you need to take a step back and look at it and say, well, the person that did it is a logical person. They just won. Didn't he just win Executive of the Year?
Yeah.
Like, we trust him. I think more than, frankly, any other management type figure in Boston sports. Yeah. Like, I can't think of anyone in a front office that I trust more than Brad Stevens. And so for him to do this, there has to be a reason, right? He's not just going to pull the trigger on something this drastic knowing that he's going to get lambasted unless there's a reason for it. And so that's what I want to try to get to today. Now, the first reason that I've seen a lot of today is the simplest one, and I think it's probably wrong. I think you might be leaning this way, Mark, but it's just simply new ownership. Bill Chisholm doesn't want to pay Jaylen Brown his due in 3 years or 2 years or whenever that contract is up. So bada bing, bada boom, you trade him away, you get some future assets. Yeah, you don't have any money savings this year or next year because of Paul George, but long term, you reset the books, and Bill Chisholm doesn't have to foot a massive bill.
I think it's quietly, they've gone about it in a way that just look at the moves they've made since his ownership, since that group took over, because you get Porzingis off the books, you get Holiday off the books, you get some of those contracts that were just signed like 12 months beforehand because Wick was in a position that he didn't care. He knew the team was going out. Well, maybe he didn't at the time, but he was running it from a fan's perspective. Like, he wanted to take care of the team. He was concerned with winning. Since then, whether it's been a directive or not, they have made these moves to shed the biggest contracts, not named Jason Tatum, off the books. I don't know if that's the private equity influence that is behind the scenes, maybe a little stiffer on the Celtics than we necessarily thought based on the initial amount of money that they were putting into it. We'll get into that a little more later in the show. We're going to hear from June Lee at the bottom of the hour. He kind of dove into it and explained it in layman's terms, maybe what's going on there. I think it's simply just the direction that the NBA is going, where when you have two guys who are making $70+ million eventually, and I know nobody wants to hear this right now because Paul George makes like 3% of the cap less than Jaylen Brown. So it's pretty much a one-for-one move here.
Right.
But it's looking at the future. It's getting in a position where you do feel like you're stuck. You feel like you're the Warriors, a team with these older players, bloated contracts. You can't really do too much. You can't get out from under it. I kind of think that he's trying to avoid that. He's trying to redefine the Celtics on the fly.
So the reason I don't buy that, well, there's two of them. The first one being, if that's the case, I don't think that they would have been so far into the Giannis sweepstakes. Because in order to get him, you would have basically had to sign him to a massive deal. And in that scenario, you're not saving any money at all. You're still going to have two massive contracts on the books.
But that was the report that came out today, that Brad, he had a hard line on where he would sign Giannis, where he wouldn't sign Giannis. And Giannis was ready to sign. This is from Shams Charania.
Sure.
He said that Giannis was ready to sign off on the deal to the Celtics, get a max extension at 35% of the cap, whatever that top number is. Brad refused to go above 30%, and when he did that, Giannis pivoted and accepted the move to Miami.
Interesting. Okay, so that may play a factor then, but I still don't think that's like, I don't think Bill Chisholm saying, no, we can't spend that amount of money on Jaylen Brown. I don't think that, to me, that's not the deciding factor. Because, I mean, they went out and they signed Mitchell Robinson, like they're willing to spend money. And I think the Porzingis and Holiday stuff, that was separate. They were just so far bloated. And those guys were proving to be aging veterans that you probably wanted to get rid of sooner rather than later because of their on-court performance, not necessarily just their money. So I don't know if I buy that. The second thing that I look at is I look at the league as a whole and the analytics side of things, and I say, analytics hates Jaylen Brown.
That they do. They say he is a very inefficient player, that he shoots too high of a volume for the amount that he makes, that he turns the ball over too much for the amount that he handles it, and the assists that he distributes. But still, 29, 6, and 5, and 6 in the MVP voting.
Yeah.
I think that trashes the analytic model.
It doesn't trash it, and I think the reason it doesn't trash it is because clearly at this point, the Celtics were way overvaluing their player, right? And the fans too, myself included.
Oh, absolutely.
We were looking at Jaylen Brown and saying, like, he is a superstar, and you're going to pay a superstar price to get him. Joke's on you. The league didn't view him that way. Because it wasn't like the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, it's not the Luka Doncic thing where it was like no one knew that Luka Doncic was going to get traded and all of a sudden he got traded. Everyone knew Jaylen Brown was to be had. And the Celtics certainly weren't like, well, Philly's our friend, we're going to do them a favor. I have to imagine that Brad Stevens took the best offer that he could get. And the fact that this is the best offer that he could get tells me that the league views Jaylen Brown very differently than the way that we did.
Yeah, that's completely clear. The market was very depressed for Jaylen Brown compared to what Celtic fans thought was going to be out there. I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going.
Yeah, so I think that factors into it as to why they got so little, that the league valued him significantly less than most people do. And that's because of the analytics. And I can buy that argument to an extent, though I still think they didn't get nearly enough for him, obviously.
I've since remembered my point.
There you go.
Because with the analytics argument, like it's come out today, the Celtics were 36-6 in the last 3 years without Jaylen Brown. And you look at like Peyton Pritchard's usage and Derek White's usage and all these people, and they are so much more an efficient player when Jaylen Brown is off the court versus when he's on there kind of hogging the ball.
And I can see that. When I see them play, I can see him being a bit of a tornado of ball hoggingness to get his own.
You can see that, but we can make that same argument any way we want to. They won 56 games last year without Jason Tatum.
Yeah,
without Jason Tatum, powered by Jaylen Brown.
Yeah. So I think the analytics has something to do with it. I don't think it's the main driving factor. I have to believe that, and I think it's Colin Cowherd that said something along the lines of that.
Smartest guy in the room argument.
Yeah, Jaylen is thinks he's the smartest guy in the room everywhere he goes and in every room he's in. And honestly, he's a super smart dude, and he's accomplished more things than you can imagine. Like, if you look at his off-the-court accomplishments, he's taught classes, I believe, at Stanford. Like, he's
MIT.
He's obviously a brilliant individual, but the smartest people often aren't aware of the fact that they can come off as kind of like
arrogant.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some of that that you're getting from him.
It's the intelligence mixed with $300 that are now in his bank account, which that makes you believe when you get to a certain status in life.
Sure.
You don't have to listen to people anymore. Yeah. Like, you have gotten to a place where no one else around you has, so why are you going to take their word?
Yeah. Let's hear from Cowherd here about that. So my theory, and this is the one I think is probably more likely than others, is that over the course of the last month, with him being rumored to be swapped for Giannis all these times, Brad Stevens probably approached him, maybe even Bill Chisholm approached him, probably Joe Mazzulla approached him, maybe even Jason Tatum, and said, hey, why don't we cool it a little bit on the live streaming and the social media and all these things? And Jaylen probably had a bit of an ego about himself and said, no, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be true to who I am. Yeah. And he kept doing it. And I have to imagine that Brad Stevens probably approached him multiple times and said something to the effect of like, hey, you can do this if you want to, but it's not a good look for you. It's not a good look for us. And we would prefer if you didn't do this, if you didn't live stream all the times and say the things that you're saying, because that was the worst part of, especially when he says things like, I'm playing with what was the term he used about it
was a bunch of salary dumps.
Yeah, a bunch of salary dumps. And it was like all these things that just kind of poke that knife a little bit, retweeting people that are saying how amazing he is and what he had to play with. Eventually, you're going to make your teammates upset. Because eventually they're going to say, this guy's ego is out of control. Is he saying I didn't contribute to this team?
Well, we've heard since the trade went down in the reporting that all those things are true. That in the building, the Celtics were a little uncomfortable with kind of how much he was putting out there, with internally his push to be viewed as a basketball equal to Jason Tatum, which it was never going to happen in that building.
No.
Now, you would hope as intelligent as Jaylen Brown is, that he could look in the mirror and say, maybe that dude is a better basketball player than me, but everything we have heard from him since the season ended would lead you to believe that he is not the most aware person. And just the level to which he was speaking after the season ended, it turned up to a new level than we had seen before. And we know, at least traditionally, how Brad Stevens and the organization has gone about their business. It's not like that.
Yeah. So I think if we had to, like, if I had to put my finger on what's most likely to have occurred here, that is probably it. That the team told him, stop. And nice words, better words than that. Stop. Please don't do this anymore. Cool it a little bit. Why don't we calm down and take a breath? And he refused to do that repeatedly. And they said, we can't keep having him do this. And they decided that it was more detrimental to the team than not to continue searching for the best deal and said, we're just going to take the best deal that we have now.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a valid excuse in my mind, though, to make that move.
No, and I think it's still the wrong move. And obviously, like, you'd be better off having dealt him, like, in the middle of next season. But I'm sure Brad Stevens wanted it to be clean. He wanted to get away from Jaylen Brown before going into next year.
You don't want it lingering,
before you have a new team, a new squad. And who knows where it goes from here? They may not be done. I just can't imagine a world where Brad Stevens got this fleeced if there wasn't a very valid reason for him doing so. Like, I just can't. He has given us enough that we have to give him the benefit of the doubt in this scenario, even if it's hard to do.
I'm hoping there's a lot of truth behind the reports that, well, maybe this move, while it appears pretty lackluster on the surface, you get 2 more first-round picks, so those are 2 more assets that you can dangle in front of New Orleans for Trey Murphy Jr., get him up here as some sort of corresponding trade or move to this one and try to add to what you have. But even so, at that point, Paul George is still... He's stuck on the team at $110 million for the next 2 years, not contributing all that much.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly is. Now, when is Cooper Flagg's deal done?
So that's the other problem here. That's the first thing.
Because if he's got 2 years left.
When I went in Jeff Tuttle's office this morning, he was like, so when can Cooper come to Boston now that we get the money for it? He's still got 3 more years on his rookie deal. And then remember, he initially hits the market as a restricted free agent, like Walker Kessler, like Jaren Duren's doing right now.
Yeah.
So Dallas would still have the opportunity to match any offer sheet he signs to.
Yeah, it's a pipe dream. But in the back of my head, you have to think it like, hey, did the timings line up in a way that Cooper Flagg would be about to hit free agency when his money comes off?
Would have lined up if you just let Jaylen Brown play out the remaining 3 damn years on his contract with the Celtics.
That's the biggest mistake in all of this, I think, is the urgency they all of a sudden felt they needed to do this. And maybe Jaylen forced their hand. I don't know. I wasn't in those rooms. But certainly you would have and could have probably gotten more if you had let it play out a little bit longer, I would think. But again, we don't know. And at this point, it's pretty clear that we were significantly overvaluing what the league believes Jaylen Brown is worth. What's ironic is that he goes now to Philly. I'm not convinced that he's going to be a better player there than Tyrese Maxey is.
Well, he won't have the ball as much now because it's...
So he may be the second fiddle to Tyrese Maxey next year in Philly, and that's going to be funny.
That'd be hilarious. But let's also remember the first person that he took aim at after saying this was his favorite season of all time, Joel Embiid, for flopping and ruining the game of basketball.
There's part of me that says that Brad Stevens is playing some level of chess that we don't understand.
Psychological chess.
And he knows that Jaylen Brown is going to blow that bad boy to the sky because Philly has always been that team that just can never get it together long term. And so part of me says putting him and Joel Embiid in the same room is going to be real interesting to watch in the next couple of years. But I don't know Joel Embiid. I think he's past the point of having too big of an ego now. I think he just is what he is, which is a guy whose body is like 90.
Let him play 30 games, get some weird random surgery the week before the playoffs, and roll out.
I did see someone say that now that he's gone, Peyton Pritchard will turn into Jalen Brunson.
I saw that too. Come on, people.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
That's wish casting. All right, we're in the Greenway Equipment Studios, your locally owned John Deere dealer. See the Smith Brothers in Bangor and Ellsworth because nothing runs like a Deere. Also brought to you by Mick Delivery through Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. 2 sausage McMuffins with egg, 2 hotcakes, 4 hash browns, and 4 small hot coffees, all for just $19.99. The bundle deal 40% off only for a limited time. Order at your local family-owned McDonald's on Main Street, Union Street in Bangor, and Wilson Street in Brewer. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll do some more reaction to this deal, including our polls, and we'd love to get your thoughts as well. 992-9029. We've laid out a couple theories that we believe may or may not be factoring into what made this trade happen. I'd love for you guys to weigh in as well. If you agree with us, you disagree with us, you've heard something else, or you just want to vent a little bit, we can be therapists. 992-9029. We'll take those calls next.
I don't know if any of that was legible.
Yeah, a little quiet there. Maybe we'll try to enhance it later on. But it's literally video from my cell phone of my TV today. But it's the governor of.
Oh, that's why it was. Such
yeah,
poor quality.
That's the only place I couldn't find it anywhere else. So I literally recorded it off my phone.
I was wondering why the quality was so terrible.
Yeah, that's what it is. But it was the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. And he said he was just talking about how nice it is, if you couldn't hear him. Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics and Brad Stevens had time and time and time again screwed, literally the word he used, screwed the Philadelphia 76ers. And so it was so very nice this time to be the ones doing the screwing. That's basically his moral of his story. And then
22 hours later, unless Brad pulls a rabbit out of his hat, he got screwed.
And then he goes on to talk about how private equity firms are destroying sports, and that's another topic for another day, perhaps. But
it's coming up in the next segment.
Is it okay?
I'm hitting us all over the head with it because there might not be anything I hate more than private equity right now in the world.
There you go.
Between shrinkflation, ruining all my sports teams.
Yeah,
come on.
Brought to you by Heroes Sports Grill and Entertainment Center. Heroes is the place to be in downtown Bangor and at heroesportsgrill.com. Also brought to you by UMaine Athletics. This fall, it's time to pack the stands at Alphonse Stadium. Cheer on Maine football. Season tickets are on sale now and give you the best value and best seats for every home game. Visit goblackbears.com/tickets. So again, give us a call if you'd like to weigh in. Jaylen Brown traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, 992-9029. Right now we do have some polls we're going to get to.
Yeah, we got 3 just quick reactionary polls. We can rapid fire through them. Who do you blame for the Jaylen Brown trade? 44% say Brad Stevens, 38% say Jaylen Brown, 18% say Bill Chisholm. I'm in the minority.
You think Bill Chisholm? That's where you're putting your blame? Okay.
I'm still blaming him.
I'm putting it on Jaylen Brown. I think he didn't handle being floated out there well, which is weird because he had been floated out there. Maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Every year it feels like he had been floated out there. Maybe he just said enough is enough. But I think his actions led the Celtics into a chasm of bad situation. And they felt that the fact that they felt the best thing they could do was to get him out of town with as little as they got in return tells me that it
was pretty toxic.
Yeah, it tells me that it had to have been very toxic. Again, Brad Stevens is not a dumb guy. He's a very intelligent man. He has done the Celtics very well. And so it must have been awful or behind the scenes for this to have happened in my mind.
And we'll never hear that side of it because Brad and the Celtics don't leak anything. You were also hearing that Jaylen Brown never once asked to be traded. He never went to the Celtics and asked that. So clearly that's coming from his camp.
His tweets and
they're leaving a breadcrumb trail.
Right.
Is Jaylen Brown a villain now? Yes, he's on Arrival. No, this isn't his doing. 82% going with the latter there saying no.
Really?
I agree with that one. I agree. He's not a villain.
No,
even though he's on Arrival, again, he didn't ask to go there. He played a part in getting his way out of town, but he played no part in winding up in Philadelphia.
Okay, so he worked his way out of town, but the fact that they sent him to Philly, I mean, that was like if I'm Brad Stevens, in this case, I'm saying screw what you just offered me. I would rather Jaylen Brown, like we tell him to stay away from the team.
We'll pay you to stay home than give you to Philadelphia.
Right? Like, I feel like that's to me, what I would have done had I been Brad Stevens and had the situation devolved as much as it appears that it did. I still wouldn't have traded him to Philly. I simply would have said, until you get your attitude right, don't show up, Jaylen.
Here's one that has definitely flipped over the last 24 hours. Do you still have full faith in Brad Stevens? 72% say nope.
Yeah.
WTF was that trade, Brad?
Yeah. I get it. I do. And I mean, the faith that I guess you have to look at like how much faith did you have before versus how much faith do you have now. And I still have faith in him, but it is...
There better be a secondary move. There better be something more coming, not just riding into next season with
maybe, but
Peyton
what is
Pritchard
that move?
And Derek White and Paul George and Jason Tatum. And I mean,
I think you're hoping that what happens is Paul George plays another like 30 games in the regular season because the NBA regular season doesn't matter. We all know this. They eke their way into the playoffs as a 7 or 6 seed, much like the 76ers did this last year. And then you get Paul George in the playoffs, fully fresh, fully healthy. And he was actually pretty good for them in the playoffs, especially defensively. And so you hope you get that guy and that you can steal a series or two.
At the small price of $110 million over a couple of years.
I mean, it doesn't... Yeah, I always tell my wife when she tries to apply logic to non-logical situations that you just can't do it. And I'm desperately flailing to try to apply logic to this.
Unless Peyton Pritchard does become Jalen Brunson and Hugo Gonzalez is all of a sudden this all-world defensive stopper that you put out on the wing and he's getting 30 minutes a game now that Jalen isn't at the position. These seem like pipe dreams way, way more than anything that could turn into reality.
You know, the part about this that hurts me the most, and I know we have to get to break, so I'll try to keep it quick. Going back to the Giannis deal, if things were this toxic with Jaylen Brown then, why was your dividing line, your red line, Hugo Gonzalez?
Yeah, like 5% Hugo and Shireman.
If you knew that this was this bad, I'm moving heaven and earth. I'm saying it's Giannis or bust, baby, but maybe it got bad after that.
I'm thinking that it might have got worse after when, according to Shams and some other people, they then pivoted to other teams and started saying, hey, what are you going to give us for Jaylen Brown? Yeah. And then when he heard that, it's all of a sudden, it's not just me for Giannis in a vacuum. They're trying to just see what they can get for me.
They got less for him than Desmond Bane in the Memphis Grizzlies when the Magic traded for him.
They got 3 firsts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he in the terms of NBA trade value,
got 4.
I thought he got 5.
He might have got 5.
I'm pretty sure it was 5 when he got traded to the Knicks, and they won a title, so kudos to them, I guess. But so he is valued less than Desmond Bane, according to you, just strictly at trade values, because all of those picks are better than the ones that, again, it's a pick swap. One of the first rounders is a pick swap that probably is not going to be anything. And you've got to think Philly's going to be good enough to not give them a lottery pick when the next one comes up in a couple of years. So you essentially got 2 second-round picks, a pick swap that won't happen, Paul George and his aging massive contract, and another first-round pick that may be in the teens if you're lucky.
You're guaranteed the first-round picks, but the way I read it is like it conveys to something else if it's not in that 1 through 9. It conveys to like a Clippers pick that Philadelphia also has.
Oh. So my understanding was that the first round pick is just a pick swap, and so they have the right to choose the better of the 2.
I know there are pick swaps in there. I just mean like the 2 first-round picks, one in 2028, one in 2031. Mm-hmm. Like those both are coming the Celtics' way, but it's still not, here's a first-round pick, use it immediately.
It's not unconditional. Yeah. There's frankly a lot of conditions on them, which make them not super. Again, probably both of them are going to be, at best, mid-round picks. Like you're not looking at a lottery pick here. So.
And that second one is 5 years from now. Jason Tatum's on the backside of his career then.
Yeah. I mean, they'll never make that pick. I've got to imagine it gets flipped somewhere else. We'll see. Brought to you by Premium Choice Broadband. Premium Choice Broadband, local family-owned, bringing affordable high-speed internet to Maine for over a decade. Call or email and mention PCB the ticket to get 1 month free. For new residential customers, visit premiumchoicebroadband.com for details. Also brought to you by Union Street Towing. If you're stuck on the side of the road, they've got you covered 24/7 statewide. From breakdowns to lockouts, they'll get you moving fast. Call 942-4200 Union Street Towing, driven to be there when you need them most. Kind of surprised that there hasn't been any sort of press conference or anything from... Yeah. I'm wondering if they're going to...
You got to sit on this for a while, get your story straight.
Well, what time does fireworks normally have parades on? Like Saturday at like 10 a.m. when everyone's at a parade, and then fireworks later in the day. That's when you hold the press conference.
Have Brad in a room at the Garden.
Yeah, something like that. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, a sports center, a weather forecast, and Mark wants to rant about private equity. That was a
hard cut.
Sudden change in music there.
Well, we get a guest in 4 minutes and 2 minutes left in that clip. And that was basically just teeing up what I believe to be the shadow figures that are ruining the Boston Celtics.
All right, so I'm going to let you rant for as long as you feel like you need to before we go to break. I will say we're brought to you by Casella. Good pay, good people, good life. Find your place at powerofhardwork.com. Some very dramatic music behind June Lee there. Making it very concerning. Mark, go ahead, hit us with it, and then send us to break.
So again, just the cliff notes there. Bill Chisholm, very rich guy, billionaire in his own right. But remember, Celtics cost $6.1 billion, an NBA record. He didn't have the money out of pocket to buy them himself. He had to go get a private equity firm to put in more than $1 billion, which was an amount that the NBA, that's not okay by NBA bylaws. You can't have that much investment from private equity, but they still went through with the public aspect of the sale, which allowed him to gain more money after being the face of it, to push down the investment from private equity. However, that relationship was already kind of set up. The private equity is the biggest influencer, the biggest ATM machine coming into the Celtics. So therefore, they have to be the first ones to get their money back. How do they get their money back? By making sure that you're not going into luxury taxes and cutting extra $250 million checks every season. I think they have a big role in this. Okay. A bigger role than the public is led to believe.
There you go. That's Mark Paulette's theory of things. We'll take a break. When we come back, it's Noah Dalzell of Celtics Blog. Welcome back to The Drive, brought to you by Dairy Queen in Old Town. The DQ $7 chicken strip meal deal has it all. 100% white meat, seasoned chicken strips, full-size fries, a drink, and a DQ sundae, all for just $7. Visit 613 Stillwater Avenue in Old Town. Mark, who was that we just heard right there?
That would be the one and only Shams Charania talking about
That's what I thought.
What turned out to be a rather depressed market for Jaylen Brown out there.
Yeah, and so that's where I want to start with our guest, Noah Dalzell of Celtics Blog and CLNS Media. Obviously, fans were led to believe he was worth significantly more, but I can't help but think that the Celtics felt that he was worth significantly more. At the end of the day, and I know sometimes I said this earlier, it's hard to put logical reasoning behind illogical things, but how are they so far off between what the Celtics inevitably got, which is very little, and what everyone believed him to be worth? Like, how is there that big of a chasm there?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think that's the $1 million question, right? Like, what went wrong here that was the return, just Paul George and 2 firsts and 2 seconds, which is not what really any of us expected. And I think I've been making sense of it over the past, almost 24 hours now. And my best understanding of the situation is that it's really a confluence of factors, including the market for Jaylen just being substantially lower than I think what we in Boston value him, what the Celtics have valued him over the past decade, what fans think he's worth, what he thinks he's worth. And we can speculate all day how much of that is because of the advanced analytics that have seemingly indicated that they have been better with him on the bench than on the floor for much of the past decade, which has been this big kind of like analytical puzzle that we've been aware of for a long time. There's also the question around like how desperate was this Celtics team to make a trade. And there has been a ton of reporting over the last few days that the Celtics were really trying to make a trade, and everybody knew about it, right? And we're getting updates from Shams Charania every 2 hours. And so when that's the case, you lose a little bit of leverage, right? And so I have to imagine that it's a little bit of both. That even in a best case scenario, without teams knowing there's a level of desperation, without the whole NBA being aware of the fact that Boston is ready to kind of end this relationship, his value was not going to be as high as 4 first-round picks and a bunch of young players and some of the things that we've seen routinely for players with his resume. At the same time, my belief, and this is not based on reporting, but this is just my my take on watching this whole thing unfold, is that the circumstances around this trade certainly didn't help his value.
I'm just curious more in like what you were hearing over the last couple of days as someone who is around this team, who covers the Celtics. What were you and your colleagues kind of hearing going into last night, and then how shocked were you guys that he gets dealt in the Eastern Conference to Philadelphia, which hadn't even been a team that we had heard of to that point in the conversation?
Yeah, I had no surprise at all that Jaylen was going to be traded. And one of my least favorite parts of the job is the trade rumors when you start to talk about a player as an asset and all of that, because we cover these guys year round, and then in the off season they become like numbers on the contract, right? So it was very apparent that was coming. And so the question was just the destination. And I'll say I had no inkling that it was going to be Philadelphia, but my expectation, and I tweeted this like 20 minutes before the trade unknowingly, but it was going to be a team that we hadn't heard much from. Because when we hear, and this is one of the things that I've learned about over the past few years, just kind of beginning in this industry, is that you have to think about why you're hearing everything that you're hearing, right? Every piece of information comes from a source with some sort of agenda, with some sort of motivation. And sometimes it's harmless, sometimes it's more harmful. But if we're hearing, okay, Portland way off, there's no deal there, that means that somebody, presumably in Portland's camp, leaked that, right? Boston is not leaking any of this. It's not in their best interest for the entire world to know how much they were yearning, to use Sean's term, to trade Jaylen. And so the more teams that I heard, the more you hear, you hear Brooklyn, you hear Denver, like the cities that kept coming up, the franchises that presumably were in talks with the Celtics. I almost was crossing them off the list because it's like you now are leaking things. And so 20 minutes before the trade, I was like, maybe it's going to be Utah. Like that's a franchise that Brad Stevens has a really good, relationship with, Danny Ainge, all of that. We haven't heard anything about them. And right as I was starting to go through the list of teams that we had seen no reporting about, it's Philadelphia, which I think was the last in the odds to acquire Jaylen. So all I had heard was like this was going to happen, and that was, just league-wide. I mean, it was pretty obvious to the average person at home. But as far as destination, I was as shocked as anybody. And in division is super unusual, right? The team that just eliminated them with a 3-1 lead, like a lot of circumstances around this trade are just very shocking at face value. And everything becomes less shocking the more you think about it. And as time goes on, I'm sure we'll be able to make more sense of it. But in the immediate aftermath, like I was absolutely stunned as anyone to see that was going to be Jaylen's destination.
So I want you, if you can, we've been spending most of this first hour trying to get into Brad Stevens' brain because we know he's a smart guy. We know he's a very good GM. I mean, he just won the award for Executive of the Year, right? So you can't look at it like the Mavericks and say, well, Nico Harrison was in above his head and he did what he did with Luka because of that. We know who Brad Stevens is. So there has to have been a reason why he did what he did. What do you think that reason is to trade him for so little in return, as you said, to your immediate rival, making them, I would say, probably significantly better, as opposed to just saying, okay, we're not getting the value that we think we should for Jaylen Brown. We're going to hold on to him. Like, how bad did the situation have to be, and what do you think Brad Stevens' thinking was there?
So, yeah, that's a good question, and I think this is where I want to just clarify that I'm speculating and not reporting, but based on how you laid it out, which I think is very accurate, it had to have been pretty bad, right? And I don't mean Jaylen was this dark, toxic cloud hanging over the locker room. I mean the relationship between a guy on a supermax contract who has been there for almost a decade, who, we know that there has been some points of friction throughout his tenure in Boston, and the franchise. And I don't know, I have genuinely no idea if it was more related to the coaching staff or other players or the front office. And I don't want to, say something that's not substantiated, and maybe more will come to light and maybe it won't. But I cannot come up with a basketball case explaining this situation. And so that's why, when I was making sense of it, I'm thinking to myself, they're not really saving money here. I know a lot of fans are frustrated about ownership and Bill Chisholm and all that. I have not heard or seen one thing that makes me think this is ownership cheaping out. And I'm not here to case for ownership. If that were the case, I would be happy to report that. But that's not really what this is. What this is looking to part ways with Jaylen Brown. And so you have to think that there's something interpersonal there. And again, it would be irresponsible of me to say something that I don't know for certain. The other piece of it is that right now, 2 first-round picks feel like nothing, right? We were hearing 4 first-round picks. We were hearing all these young prospects that maybe were going to come to Boston. We were hearing Giannis, right, who obviously is one of the best players in the league. But there is a world where 5 years from now we're sitting here and the 2 franchise cornerstones are the players they draft in 2028 and 2031 if those picks materialize into lottery picks, which they could. And so Brad Stevens is a lot smarter than you when it comes to roster building. He's a lot smarter than most of us, all of us probably. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. This was not an impulsive decision, but I'm not going to defend the trade as it currently stands as this was good value because I can't really make the case that it is.
I wanted to follow up on the 2 first-round picks because I've kind of done some research on them, but it was kind of convoluted and confusing, and I'm not sure we don't know all the facts yet anyway. The first one felt like it wasn't going to be as good of a first-round pick as you might have expected in this deal, and then obviously in 2031, that's so far away, it's tough to tell. What do you make of those 2 first-rounders? What types of conditions that you know of at this point, if any, are placed on them, and the swaps and all the things? Because it's not just a simple one-for-one, like you're getting a pick and giving up a player, right? Yeah,
so the 2031 pick is just a clear, it's Philly's pick in 2031, which is so far out that like I'm having a hard time conceptualizing like what to expect from Philadelphia at that point. Like they could be in a bunch of different situations. I mean, that's after Jaylen's and Embiid's contract expires. Maybe like Embiid, Maxey and VJ Edgecombe are like the next great duo in the league. Maybe the whole thing's blown up. So Celtics fans should definitely be rooting against the long-term success of Philadelphia. The 2028 pick is so complicated that I don't want to say it incorrectly, but there's a whole formula. It's the better between Philly's pick and the Clippers pick. And what I've been told is Celtics fans should be rooting against the Clippers, the Spurs, and the 76ers ahead of 2028. And one of whatever team does kind of the worst there is with, there's a whole formula there where it might end up being a pick swap, but likely it's going to just be a first round pick. But it's all very numerical, like it's between 1 and 9 or 10 and 19. So I don't have it in front of me. But that one is a little bit more complex. 2031 is just a straight like first round pick from Philadelphia.
We'll break out the It's Always Sunny boards with the string and the tack and try to keep track of it between now and then. And
I didn't even know that San Antonio factored into it at all, so that's news to me, but wow.
It just kind of popped in my head, like, while you're answering that, Noah, that 2031 pick, that kid is, 12 or 13 years old right now? Like, no wonder it is so hard to conceptualize that far into the future.
Right.
My question to you is, do you feel that there has to be some sort of supplemental move to this coming? Like, is there another trade coming? Is there more moves to come? Or are they content rolling into next season with the roster that they've constructed now with Paul George and Mitchell Robinson on there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when the year ended, I didn't feel like this roster was like as far away from contending as a lot of other people. And Brad Stevens then hosted his end of season press conference and basically said we're really far. I mean, those were not his exact terms, but that was my takeaway from everything that he said after they blow the 3-1 lead. And so then you start thinking about, okay, what are the moves that can make that dramatically alter this roster and potentially make it a lot better, right? If you don't believe in it as currently constructed. And so what did they do in totality? They signed Mitchell Robinson. They signed Mike Conley to a minimum deal, right? That's probably not somebody who's going to play a whole lot. And they swapped Jaylen Brown for Paul George. So I don't think that if you are in the camp that this team was really far from actually being a contender, then they're still really far, right? Like Mitchell Robinson is definitely an upgrade over Nikola Vucevic for what they need on this roster. I think it would be hard to make a case that Paul George is an upgrade, right? He is a downgrade from Jaylen. And so what you're counting on is Jason Tatum having a fully healthy MVP caliber season, Peyton Pritchard assuming like the real mantle of like the number 2 guy alongside Tatum. I'm super high on Peyton Pritchard. I think he can make a leap and kind of, I think the ceiling is very high there. You hope that Paul George and Mitchell Robinson can stay healthy, all of those things. So I'm not saying like this team can't contend as it currently is constructed, but based on what I've heard from Brad Stevens, like on the record, right, in his presser, if they were far then, I don't think they're any closer now, because I believed in the team as it was at 5 o'clock yesterday, right, with Jaylen on the roster. And I think they got worse in the short term with that trade. That being said, like, is there a move out there that's going to like totally raise my confidence in this team? Nothing that I've seen. I've seen some interest, the reported interest from Michael Scotto, who's pretty reputable, linking the Celtics to Trey Murphy of the Pelicans. I know he's somebody that fans have been excited about. Is that the move that takes you over the hump? I don't really think so. So it's just tough because we were basically pitched like this team is far away from contending, and our 56-win record wasn't as good as it seems, because a lot of teams were tanking, is kind of what Brad said. And so I still think they're a little bit far, but it's an unpredictable league. I mean, nobody would have had Knicks Spurs in the finals last year going into the season, right? So if everything clicks, they might actually be right there. And maybe Paul George is the perfect like super role player that they needed. But I think more needs to come if they are trying to contend, and next year is really like a championship or bust year, the way that most years have been.
I want to go back to the Giannis situation and kind of a two-part question. One, do you think things significantly fractured more with the team and Jaylen Brown after he didn't get dealt for him? And then two, and kind of I should have asked him in reverse order, but either way, the fact that they didn't deal him and maybe like Hugo Gonzalez was the line or Baylor Shireman was the line, does that look more surprising to you in retrospect, or is that just a bunch of nonsense reporting that isn't really factual and they were much further away from Giannis than we ever thought?
Yeah, so what I've heard from sources around the NBA is that the Celtics package was farther from being accepted by Milwaukee than what was initially reported. So what I've heard is that they offered Jaylen Brown and 2 future first-round picks. And then I think a lot of the conversation became, and they wouldn't add Ugo to that. My understanding is that if they wouldn't add Ugo and Baylor and like another 2 firsts. So we're talking about like 4 more assets, not just Ugo. So I do know this. Celtics are super high on Ugo Gonzalez. Like it is, they really think he's going to be something. As does every single scout that I meet when I'm on the road covering games. Like everybody thinks this guy is going to be really good. So that's certainly going to help this trade or the non-trade for Giannis age better if he does kind of take that next step. But that he was not the difference maker between this trade happening and it not happening. It was a little bit more than that. And I think they just got, like, now I'm seeing like someone post Ugo highlights and it's like, oh God, he has a target on his back. I think it's a little bit of an understatement that was exactly what was missing.
And we'll let you go with this. Have you heard anything from the team, Noah, about press conferences or media availability for Brad Stevens? Is he going to have it like maybe during some 4th of July parades or during the fireworks so they can kind of, like keep it nice and quiet?
Well, the trade doesn't become official, I believe, until July 6th.
Oh.
So
yeah, nothing can go through.
We probably won't hear anything on the record until then. At least that's my understanding. And then the other piece of it is just, Summer League starts July 8th. So I'll be in Vegas for the full 2 weeks. I hope they don't do any introductory press conference here because most of our press corps will be in Vegas covering the Ugo and the young prospects they just drafted and some other guys. But I wouldn't be shocked if they take their time or they might squeeze this in like right before Summer League starts. And again, like I'm really interested in Jaylen's introductory press conference. Like that's what I'm most interested in right now. And obviously hearing from Brad will be important, and fans I know are pretty pissed off about this. So I look forward to getting the chance to get some clarity for them.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that Jaylen hasn't already gone on Twitch, frankly.
He can have his press right anytime.
Yeah. Hey, Noah, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and have fun out in Vegas.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Noah Dalzell right there of Celtics Blog and CLNS Media. That'll do it for the first hour of the show, brought to you by Madden Generator Services, expert installation, dependable maintenance, and a free 7-year warranty on new Generac installs. They'll keep your home in the game. 951-4668. That's Madden Generator Services, power you can count on. Also brought to you by Fat Panda Boba Tea and Market on Harlow Street in Bangor next to Goslin's Bakery. Sip fresh boba, explore snacks, ramen, and their tasty Jamaican patties. Also visit their brewer location, Wilson Street, next to Hannaford. Second hour of the show coming up next. We'll have Kevin Paul DuPont to talk some Bruins. We'll, of course, talk a whole lot more about Jaylen Brown and everything that happened there, and we would love your phone calls as well. Give us a call, 992-9029. And I can't forget, speaking of the Heroes Hotline, we have Drive On coming up at about 5:15, so we're giving away. Yeah, tell us the prizes,
should we dangle
Mark?
some prizes out there
I
that
think
we have
so.
not dangled yet? How about a $10 gift card to Heroes for the first question? We got 2 movie passes to Bangor Mall Cinemas for the second. We have a Dean's detailing package and express interior detail for number 3. And if you get number 4, now this last one, the prizes always roll over. If we don't have our winner today, we double up the prizes for next week. The last one is locked in for as long as this
just
potential
too big of a
4-week
prize
run
to
goes
double.
on. Maine football 2026 season tickets.
Hey.
You get a pair.
Yeah, you can't really. How do you double that?
Yeah, we don't want to go 4 and 6 and 8 and put the ticket office in
All
a
of a
hard
sudden,
place.
you get 20 people getting tickets.
You get an entire row of season tickets.
All right, so we'll do that at about 5:15. That'll be Drive On. So all that and more coming up in the drive next.